Hey everyone. Hey everyone. For those of you who've been following me for a while know that I've been using tretinoin for a long time. It's actually been like over 4 years now. And recently I switched to a lower strength tretinoin, which I know is like very uncommon. Usually people progressively get higher and higher in strength when they use tretinoin, but I'm doing the opposite and now I'm on 0.05% tretinoin, which actually I never had been on before. I'll briefly talk about how I first started using tretinoin and then go into the details about why I decided to drop down to a lower percentage 4 years later. So 4 years ago, I started using tretinoin for my face and it was prescribed at 0.1%. Don't ask me why. The dermatologist at the time, who I didn't really know, just prescribed that to me, and it took me a while to actually start using it because I didn't really understand much about it, and that dermatologist was just frankly not a very good dermatologist and didn't explain it to me. So after a few months, I really decided to research it on my own and how to start incorporating it. And I was kind of aggressive with it. So I only learned later on that 0.1% was considered a very high strength and not tolerable for most people. And so when I started using it, I thought just maybe trying every other day was a good place to start, but my skin got really kind of like peely, like a lot of people experience, and somewhat irritated. So I think that I started dropping back to maybe like a couple times a week for the first few weeks, and then I kind of increased the frequency from there. And it only took me a few months to start using it every other day, and then maybe like 4 months or 5 months to start using it every single day, which now in retrospect, I realize is like really aggressive compared to how most people incorporate it into their skincare routine. I was also trying to use it on my neck at the time, and that did not work out as well. And my neck got very inflamed and irritated, and still to this day, I'm very careful about using it on my neck. So that's also kind of going to be a part of the reason that I'll mention later why I dropped down. It was really obvious that it was making a huge improvement in my skin. I noticed right after using it that the overall just like texture and color of my skin was more uniform and just looked a little more like supple, softer. And that was encouraging to see. That definitely made me want to continue to use it for the long term, which is what I ended up doing. So tretinoin, it's like one of the most researched skincare ingredients out there. It was originally formulated for acne. Researchers found a side effect being like anti-aging properties, in that it reduced wrinkles, fine lines, and increased firmness in study participants. And so for decades, this has been researched. So there's a lot of studies. So I read some meta-analyses that went through all of these studies and kind of aggregated them to see what the overall consensus was. And it does seem that anywhere between 0.02% and 0.1% produces results. And they all somewhat agree that even lower strengths can produce these beneficial results for photoaging, but it might take longer to achieve the results. So say using 0.1% might only take a few months, whereas using a 0.02% would take a year. So from that standpoint, I already reaped the benefits of using the 0.1%. I already saw a drastic improvement in my skin long ago. So the need to use the 0.1% wasn't really necessarily there anymore. But I just kept using it out of habit because that's what I had already used. So that I'm going to move on to my next point, which is the cost. So right now I'm living in Mexico, which I probably at this point haven't really discussed anything about, but I am living here. And so I'm paying out of pocket for tretinoin. And I learned from going to the pharmacy that the 0.1%, you can only buy it in brand name like retin-a. Here you can't buy generic 0.1%, and so it ends up being significantly more costly. So when I went, the price was around like over $50 for 0.1%, which I think is even less than what the US charges full price without insurance. But still, the generic 0.05%, which is the highest strength generic you can buy here, was only like $8. And for me, that to me was enough to justify like, I'm just going to try the 0.05%, because I already knew that the studies kind of confirmed that 0.05%, even 0.025% is adequate for anti-aging, photo-aging damage repair. Sorry for the noise. And so at that moment, I made like a split decision, because I was actually going to get a 0.1% to just like use what I've always used. But the like difference in price was huge. I mean, it's like 15% of the cost of the brand name, something like 15%. I don't know. Let me see really quick. What is 8 divided by 50? Yeah, 16% of the cost, or in other words, like 85% less than the brand name. And so obviously that was a big factor to me, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to use that. But all these other things ended up helping me justify that decision, because I was like, well, it kind of works the same anyway. It might take a little bit longer, but at this point, I think that I'm more in a maintenance phase because I've reaped the benefits, like I said. And so, yeah, it's not really urgent for me to just like continue with the highest strength that I can get, you know. But on the topic of the 0.1%, it is a high percentage relative to what most people can tolerate. And for me, I never really considered that that was a factor in why it was so difficult for me to use vitamin C over the years. Now, eventually I did get to a point where I could wear it every day, use vitamin C every day with tretinoin, but it didn't really occur to me that that was making it so difficult to incorporate vitamin C until I really sat down and thought about it and read other people's anecdotes that it's really hard to use other active ingredients when you're using a very high strength tretinoin, even when you can tolerate tretinoin. So I tolerated tretinoin really well, but once I started incorporating vitamin C, and then I was also doing some like exfoliant BHAs, AHAs, it got to a point where, you know, I was able to tolerate those, but the more that I incorporate ingredients, it just seems like unnecessarily risky to use such a high strength tretinoin when it does. It has the potential to cause more sensitivity to the other ingredients that you use. And so most people don't recommend using a high strength tretinoin with a bunch of other active ingredients. So that for me is like a justification to continue using the 0.05% beyond just the price, right? Because like at the end of the day, if it's an ingredient that's really going to provide a lot of benefit to you, then like paying an extra $42 isn't the end of the world. But for me, I just haven't noticed that there's been any change from dropping down in the percentage. And so I don't really have any incentive to pay the extra amount at this point, unless I do notice that, like, for whatever reason, some of the results start to dissipate. But I don't really foresee that happening because I used it for so long. And like I said, I'm in the maintenance phase. So the last point I'll make is that I had a lot of issues with using the high percentage on my neck, and it is something that I still want to like use tretinoin on that area. But the 0.05%, and I'm still not using that every day on my neck just because I'm being very cautious. I don't want to develop like an allergy to it, even though it's really rare. But my first experience of having that just rash on my neck when I hit it too hard, I don't want that to happen again. So I'm still being very cautious, but the 0.05% is going to make it less likely to have any complications with that. And it just makes me feel better about using it on areas where the skin is thinner. So I'm hoping to be able to ramp that up and actually use it every single day just to have like some more benefits, because I do have some, I like notice some issues on my neck just with fine lines, and I'd like to address those, and hopefully tretinoin can tackle that just like it did for my face. Just thought I'd share because it is kind of unusual for someone to use a lower strength after so many years. But I'm curious, if you are using tretinoin, what strength are you on and how long did it take you to get there? Because that would be interesting to know. So let me know, are there any other active ingredients that you find you can't use with tretinoin or just have a hard time using in general? That would also be kind of interesting to know. I'm gonna end it there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.